Hello, YouTubers, friend compatriots, liquor shells, deadly search pets and spazzles, geopolitical fans. I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood. And I want to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, the context of the Muslim Brotherhood being puppets of Western interests. And when I say Western interests, I mean the United States, but also other components in the Middle East, such as Israel, Saudi Arabia. And I know there's a lot of people who are perplexed by that viewpoint, thinking that the Muslim Brotherhood are a terrorist group spread throughout the Middle East and the world, who are after world domination and spreading Sharia law. And that may or may not be a part of their platform, but I'm going to focus in more on their history and their contacts with Western intelligence to figure out whether they are indeed puppets of Western interests. And one of the reasons why this story comes to the fore because there's a lot of Muslim Brotherhood characters who are on trial in Egypt, and they are being accused of accepting money from the Americans, the CIA, to the tune of $850,000 a year for some, $85,000 a month for several of the big leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. But anyway, let's get down to a little history, as I like to do, because a lot of these contacts have been built up over the years for a reason, and there's loyalties created, there's networks created, and that's why they can continue to exist to this day, and they can be very complex additions to all the geopolitical events that we see all over the Middle East. So never assume that everything is as it appears, and lots of people are learning that from watching what's going on in Syria. But it's very important to know that a lot of people are being played who are also playing someone else, who are also being played, and there's layers and layers of useful idiots in these scenarios. And one of the things I pointed out in other videos is that in order to control some of these groups, like say the Muslim Brotherhood, you don't really need to control all the masses of followers. You only need to control the leadership, and the leadership can guide the masses into the kind of events that are desired by outside interests and countries who want to interfere in the goings on in Egypt. So let's get to the history. So we had a Sunni Muslim, Hassan al-Banna, who was the founder of the Society of Muslim Brothers in Egypt in 1929. And interestingly enough, during World War II, the Muslim Brotherhood supported Hitler and the Nazis and collaborated with the Nazis during World War II, targeting British interests in that region. And in fact, there was a Islamic division, SS division, called the Hanjar. And but the Muslim Brotherhood have a history, as you'll see, through this quick nutshell history of perpetrating a certain amount of violence, then being banned, and then coming out of the shadows, and then perpetrating some more violence. But I think it's important to point out, too, that with the Muslim Brotherhood, like a lot of other Muslim groups, like Hezbollah and Hamas, they have social contingents, and they have military wings. And so the Muslim Brotherhood, they're generally a peaceful group that has renounced violence, but they certainly can't control all of their followers. And then the fact that there will be militant terrorist cells within the Brotherhood, and so that's something to bear in mind. So the Prime Minister Nukrashi was assassinated in 1948, so that's when the Muslim Brotherhood were banned in Egypt. And then they attempted to assassinate Nasser in 1954. And this is an interesting component because the Brotherhood opposed communism in Egypt, working with the USSR during the Cold War. So this is why the CIA began working with the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's when a lot of these connections were being made. And Nasser had legalized the Muslim Brotherhood in spite of an attempted assassination in 1954. He legalized the Muslim Brotherhood again in 1964, but then banned it again by 1966 after some violence, and he even publicly executed a lot of the leaders. And point in fact, too, in the same year that there was an attempted assassination on Nasser, and the CIA were working with the Muslim Brotherhood to effect this change in this event, a group of Islamist scholars visited the U.S. In 1954, including Muslim Brotherhood members, for a so-called conference. And Talcott Celia, a former U.S. Middle East diplomat, said that, quote, "We thought of political Islam as a counterweight to communism. We saw it as a moderate positive force. We saw them as useful," unquote. So this shows an early understanding of the potentialities of working with fundamentals in the Middle East to advance U.S. interests there. And this group of Islamist scholars actually met with Eisenhower in the White House as well. And like I said, the Brotherhood opposed communism and working with the USSR, and had roots tied to Nazism. So this is kind of an interesting saga unfolding. And Ramadan, who is the Muslim Brotherhood leader who came to meet Eisenhower, he was actually the son of the founder, Hassan al-Banna, and all of his expenditures were financed by the U.S. side, and German sources said, and Swiss sources said that they knew that he was an agent of the U.S. and the British. And this would also make sense that the Muslim Brotherhood would be operating closely with British intelligence because they had a long history there. And the British, of course, by the end of World War II, would also be working against any Russian influence in Egypt. So anyway, they have and then in 2005, a Wall Street Journal article claimed that the Muslim Brotherhood formed a working relationship with the U.S. intelligence organizations stretching back to this particular time. So then we get back to Egypt history. Anwar Sadat was assassinated in 1981, and this was an event blamed on the Muslim Brotherhood, a result of the peace treaty with Israel in 1979. So we can see back and forth we have this relationship with Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and other countries as well. As a matter of fact, there's branches of the Muslim Brotherhood in 70 countries that include their main spheres of influence are Egypt, Syria, Gaza, Libya, Tunisia, and Jordan. In Syria, the same thing. The Assad in power now, his father, in 1980, the Muslim Brotherhood attempted to assassinate him. And membership was made a capital offense in Syria, and Syrian military virtually wiped out the Muslim Brotherhood. Now we see members of the so-called Muslim Brotherhood in Syria rising up again in the so-called civil war there. And Jordan also has Muslim Brotherhood, where they also operate as a successful political party. And then we also know that the Muslim Brotherhood is the breeding ground for the Mujahideen that were in Afghanistan resisting the Soviets during the 80s. So the United States was working closely with the Muslim Brotherhood then as well, shipping foot soldiers off to Afghanistan. And it's sometimes the connections can, of course, be more tentative than they appear. For example, we have the CIA wanting to perpetrate the assassination of Nasser back in 1954, and we have the Muslim Brotherhood willing to do that. And it turns out that Britain and the U.S. devised a plan for the assassination of Nasser and funneled money to the Muslim Brotherhood. So there could just be a money trail of money going from the U.S. To a Muslim Brotherhood who may not know where that source is. But a lot of this other evidence seems to point out that there is a connection. And in fact, Robert Dreyfus in 1980 said a lot about this, and I will read from him to a fair extent. And he says, quote, "The real Muslim Brotherhood is not the fanatical sheikh with his equally fanatical following, nor is it even the top ayatollahs and mullahs who lead entire movements of such madmen. Khomeini and Gaddafi are exquisitely fashioned puppets. The real Muslim brothers are those whose hands are never dirty with the business of killing and burning. They are the secretive bankers and financiers who stand behind the curtain, the members of the old Arab, Turkish, and Persian families with business and intelligent connections to the UK. The Muslim Brotherhood is about money, banking, oil trade, drug running, arms running, gold, and diamond smuggling. So this sounds like they're pretty much the same as all the other corrupt elites around the planet, and so it makes sense that the real Muslim Brotherhood is a crowd of fanatical, poor, uneducated, useful idiots and thuggish foot soldiers who are bankrolled by a bunch of bankers and old family money from the old Ottoman Empire and having connections going back to the UK. And the fact is, it's about making money and taking advantage of this chaos. And just like a lot of Al-Qaeda are going to Syria just to loot, we have the Muslim Brotherhood involved in all sorts of unsavory activities, including drug running, arms running, gold and diamond smuggling. Dreyfus went on to say, quote, by allying with the Muslim Brotherhood, the Anglo-Americans are not merely buying into a terrorist-for-hire racket. They are partners in a powerful worldwide financial empire that extends from Swiss bank accounts to offshore havens in Dubai, Kuwait, and Hong Kong. So that's why we talk about the Muslim Brotherhood being puppets. The elites, the leaders are probably bought out. They are working for sometimes known masters, sometimes for not known masters. And this is a very complex situation. So I just wanted to clarify that when we talk about the complex situation of the Muslim Brotherhood actually being puppets of the Western elites, an explanation is in order. And who better else to comment on this than Zbigniew Brzezinski? And he referred to the explosion of violence in the Middle East as the, quote, arc of crisis, unquote. And he talks about a deliberate plan developed by global strategists like Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger, Dr. Alexander King, and Dr. Bernard Lewis. And this Western policy is in combination with the Muslim Brotherhood. And this plan and these ideas and these sort of geopolitical strategies are developed by these sort of people and then distributed. In this case, the Muslim Brotherhood, they have a Institute for Islamic Studies in Geneva, and there's an Islamic Council of Europe in London, and they direct most of the Brotherhood activity all around the world, from Morocco to Pakistan, India, and controlling hundreds of religious centers all across the Middle East, and yet they're directed from Geneva and London. So that's something to bear in mind as well. And then we have more recent events as well. There's talk that perhaps Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood had some involvement in the violence in Benghazi. In February of 2011, there was a secret meeting. Senior leader of the Muslim Brotherhood and Frank Weissner, a former U.S. ambassador to Egypt, met at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo. And this is purportedly where money has been passed out and distributed to leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. And in January, just previous to February of 2011, in January, there was charges by the Egyptian government that the U.S. was working with the opposition. And we heard this a lot during the Arab uprisings. Egypt even then recognized that the U.S. was working with the opposition, being the Muslim Brotherhood. And in fact, the first candidate chosen by the Muslim Brotherhood was El-Shater, and he was fielded as the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, but was disqualified because he had previous criminal convictions. And then he was replaced with Mohammed Morsi. And interestingly enough, there's stories in the news now that say that this same man, El-Shater, is in prison. And when John McCain went over there, that was the first person they were interested in. It wasn't Mohammed Morsi, it was El-Shater. And there's other news agencies that claim that El-Shater has valuable information on nefarious U.S. activities in that region. So anyway, what a little cesspool, but once again, showing that there is definitely a connection between U.S. intelligence, British intelligence, and the Muslim Brotherhood, and perhaps enough intelligence to suggest that they are indeed puppets of Western powers. And as I stated before, and I'll state again, it's very, very important to bear in mind that the throngs of America-hating, effigy-burning, flag-burning jihadists in the street and the thugs that go to these war zones do not necessarily have to be on board with the same program that the leaders on. The leaders respond to the same thing a lot of leaders respond to: money. And the U.S. has used this strategy. Certainly we've seen it rampant in Afghanistan. We've seen bribery on a massive scale in Iraq, bribing Sunnis not to resist, bribing warlords in the Taliban in Afghanistan. So why is it such a stretch that America would shell out money for members of jihadi groups, Al-Qaeda, and the Muslim Brotherhood? I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.